Hello, chismosas y chismosos, and welcome back to Bay Area Housewife of True Crime, where I like to tell the stories of the real cucuys and lloronas of the world. We are at part 2 of the Josefa Segovia case. As a reminder, topics may be triggering. Viewer and listener discretion is strongly advised. The people mentioned are innocent until proven guilty in court. With all that being said, grab your hot Cheetos and let's dive back into Josefa's case. A letter to the Stockton Times on April 6, 1850 said, and I quote, "Mexicans have no business in this country. I don't believe in them. The men were made to be shot, and the women were made for our purposes. I am a white man. I am. A Mexican is pretty near black. I hate all Mexicans," unquote. The Stockton Times published this letter in the paper and tried to distance themselves from the blatant racist remarks by adding a disclaimer that read, "We insert the following letter, though we do not hold ourselves responsible for our correspondents' sentiments," unquote. This is almost as bad as saying no offense before proceeding to offend someone. Even deeper, the writer of such trash appears to justify his cryptic attraction for Mexican women through his hatred and white supremacy. The Caucasian man who wrote the letter was a veteran of the Mexican War. While Josefa was reduced to being called Juanita, the Mexican or the Spanish woman, in stark contrast, the minor was referred to by his entire legal name of Frederick Alexander Augustus Cannon. And let me not get started on the victim blaming Josefa faced after her brutal murder. Many historical documents blame Josefa's appearance, gender, ethnic background, culture, and the way she carried herself as the reason for her fate. Even though there were actual working reporters at the lynching, the story broke 4 days later. Based in San Francisco, the Daily Alta California released an article about it on July 9th of 1851. The newspaper also just called her the Spanish woman who was outraged by Frederick's behavior after he, quote, entered her home, unquote, how she drove the Bowie knife to his heart after he arrived to apologize, how she, quote, gracefully removed 2 plaits of raven black hair to make room for the fatal cord, unquote. After she spoke her last words, she asked that her body be buried. A man and miner named Franklin Buck, who was present at the lynching, wrote the following in his diary a couple years later as he was forever haunted by this case. Then, at Downeyville, I always think of the Spanish girl standing on the plank of the bridge, tossing her hat to a friend and putting the rope around her neck, folding her hands and facing death with a bravery that made its men ashamed. Pave, Josefa, and the girls were so scarce in those days too, unquote. I had to look up what pave meant, and it's basically pobrecita. Franklin also worried about his buteng back home, that she had aged, as he writes, and I quote, "I shall not be surprised to find you wrinkled. The elasticity in your step gone, and your whole tout ensemble decidedly passé," unquote. This fine piece of a man goes on to write, "Nor is it considered hardly respectable to be seen riding Sunday with the Mexican señorita, but there are a good many things yet to be reformed, but they will be accomplished in time," unquote. To add more salt to the wound, in 1893, Major William Downey, the man who named Downeyville after himself, published a memoir and dedicated a chapter titled "Lynching a Beauty." He writes in part, but the most striking feature about Juanita was her personality. She was of the Spanish-Mexican mixture, and the blood of her fathers flowed fast and warmly in her. She was proud and self-possessed, and her bearing was graceful, almost majestic, unquote. On July 15th of 1851, the steamer Pacific Star published an article about this case, and it read as follows. Josefa was rather low of stature, stout built, with raven tresses, black eyes, teeth regular, and of pearly whiteness. She might be called pretty, so far as the style of swarthy Mexican beauty is so considered. She seemed perfectly calm and collected, was dressed with considerable attention to taste, had her hair flowing freely over her neck and shoulders. In the short, presented more the appearance of one who would confer kindness than one who thirsted for blood. But the propensity of her race was truthfully developed, not only by the entire testimony, but by her own statement at that of her paramour. Her name was Josefa Loaiza Segovia, and her case is a prime example of the violence against a person due to their race and gender. Although she was the first and only woman to have reportedly been lynched in California, without a shadow of a doubt, I truly believe there are more. We just don't know about them yet because they were not in our history books. As we know all too well, even now in 2025, hate and violence for people with any degree of color is far too prevalent. May the life of Josefa Loaiza Segovia and her unborn child never be forgotten. We've reached the end of today's episode at Bay Area Housewife of True Crime. Thank you so much for coming down the rabbit hole where I currently live. As always, I accept and respect your opinions. I welcome all comments, questions, case suggestions. Call me, beat me at yayareahousewife@gmail.com. I'll see you chismosas y chismosos in the next. Adios.